Governments, businesses, sports leagues taking drastic steps to combat the spread of coronavirus. In New York, gatherings of more than 500 people have been banned so far.
And in Washington and Oregon, gatherings of more than 250 are not allowed, according to public health experts. These steps are necessary. They call them critical. Joining us via Skype to expand on this is Hill correspondent Reid Wilson. He also is author of Epidemic, Ebola, and the Global Scramble to Prevent the Next Killer Outbreak. So great to have you, Reid. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to see you, Reid.
So what is your assessment of how public health officials are reacting so far? Do you think that they've gone far enough in terms of banning gatherings?
Let's take this on several different levels here. First of all, at the state and local level, there are some states and cities that have taken the right steps to not enforce, but really encourage the sort of social distancing that's going to stop the spread of the coronavirus over the next few weeks and months. In places like you mentioned, Washington, Oregon, California, they've banned gatherings of those over 250. In places like New York, the governor has instituted a cordoned-off zone around the synagogue in New Rochelle that really became the epicenter of their outbreak. But there are other states. Oh, and by the way, I'd point to Ohio, make this a bipartisan thing. Governor Mike DeWine out there has done a really good job in shutting down a lot of events and sporting leagues and sort of the smaller local gatherings that happen. At the federal level, though, no, nothing's happening, and it's becoming an absolute disaster. The federal government has not declared any kind of emergency. They haven't offered guidance. I'm hearing from a lot of local health departments and local officials who say that they want some guidance from the federal government that they just haven't gotten in the last few weeks and months. Like, where are they? Where are the feds actually acting on something that they haven't acted on so far?
Right. And Reid, one of the things that has baffled Crystal and I has been on this testing front. I mean, the government has basically, the CDC, has had no tests available. I mean, yesterday, Crystal said that only 8 tests in the whole country have been made by the CDC. I know some had been done by private and state health departments, but only 11,000, according to a briefer to Congress, have been done since the beginning of the crisis. And South Korea somehow is able to do 10,000 per day. What is going on there? Why are we lacking so much in testing capacity in this country?
So there are a couple of things to unpack there. First of all, this is going to be the topic of all of the postmortem autopsies that we do after this thing is over. The ironic juxtaposition here is that during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, it was the World Health Organization that had fallen flat on its face and the CDC that came riding to the rescue. Now it's the World Health Organization that had the tests ready, sent them to China and South Korea and Italy and everywhere else to begin the testing process, and CDC is the one that decided to create its own test, and that test failed. This is I can't formulate the words to describe what an utter catastrophe this has been. Somebody is going to get fired for this, and probably a lot of somebodies should get fired for this. But the secondary part of this is it's not just the test that's the problem. It's also the capacity. If I give you 1 million tests, but you can't complete those tests, you can't analyze those tests in the machines that are given, it's like, what good do the tests do? If you and I get tested, but they can't tell us whether or not those tests show that we're positive or not, well, that's a pretty big problem. It's like playing baseball without a bat. How are you going to hit the ball? Right. The capacity that you talked about there, across the country, we really only have the capacity to test about 18,000 people a day. And of those 18,000, 8,000 of them are through the California State Laboratory alone. So the rest of the country, the other 49 states, well, there's only a 10,000 person test capacity. And let me tell you, we're getting close to a point where we may have, close to 10,000 people needing tests every day. This is really scary. So it's good that there are more private labs coming online. It's not good that this has been such an utter catastrophe for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Well, and it helps to feed a sense of sort of fear and panic because you just have no idea how widespread it is. Since people aren't getting tested, you look around you and you're like, who knows, right? I wouldn't even know what to tell someone. We work in this industry. If someone was feeling ill and had the symptoms, I wouldn't even know what to tell them to do because you show up at an emergency room, you show up at urgent care, you show up at a hospital. There's no guarantee you're even going to be able to get the test to know what needs to happen. It's an astonishing situation. Reid, why aren't we now, since CDC has failed so dramatically, why aren't we calling on the World Health Organization? Is that something that's happening? Is that something that's a possibility?
I mean, I hate to say it, the WHO has got their hands rather full at the moment.
Yeah.
They are dealing with an outbreak that's got, more than 100, I haven't looked at the numbers in the last hour or two, but, probably more than 130,000 cases around the country. It was north of 125,000 yesterday. And we in the United States have about 1,300 confirmed cases. So we're 1% of the global total, where Italy is an absolute catastrophe, where South Korea, although they're bending the curve downward in a really impressive way, it's still a really bad outbreak there. The Chinese are still dealing with tens of thousands of cases. France, Germany, the UK, they all have more cases than we do. So the WHO has other priorities. And by the way, we're not just a first world country, we're the United States of America. We shouldn't be the one who is at the focal point of the WHO, which really exists to help global health security everywhere else. We know how to do this. The CDC is the gold standard worldwide. They have just picked a really bad time to screw this one up.
And so, Reid, as you mentioned, South Korea and Italy, I mean, I don't want to be alarmist, but one of the things that I have seen from health experts is that Italy is, probably the closest comparison for how this thing might go. What are some of the things that we might be able to get ahead of in order to prevent an Italy-like situation?
So, yeah, we're tracking about 10 days behind where Italy was in terms of their outbreak and the number of cases and sort of the pace at which cases are increasing. What we can do now is what the Italians waited to do until Saturday. Which is start locking things down, start canceling events. We've already started a few things. The troubling thing to me is that those cancellations are coming from corporate America. They're not coming from the government. I mean, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, they made their own decisions to close down. The problem here is we don't have any guidance from the federal government to actually, close down things on a broader level. It's time right now for us to take the steps that Italy took over the weekend when they first locked down a couple of northern regions and then locked down the entire country.
Mm-hmm. Reid, what do you think about the elections that are supposed to happen on Tuesday? I mean, it doesn't seem like an amazing idea to have voters going out, congregating at the polls. You and I both know, first of all, older people tend to vote more. Second of all, the people who staff these polling locations tend to be retirees. They tend to be our elders who are volunteering their time. This doesn't seem like a great idea right now.
Well, no, it sure doesn't. And boy, I hope a lot of people vote by absentee. I hope a lot of people cast votes early. By the way, a fair warning to everybody in those states, if you vote by absentee ballot, don't lick your envelope, because there are going to be a lot of poll workers who have to open their envelopes, and they're going to be covered in gloves and things like that.
Oh, my God. Didn't even think about that.
Something I did not even think about, but terrifying, too. Yeah.
Your ballots.
Well, Reid, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
So great to have you, Reid. Thank you so much, and make sure you stay safe.
Stay safe at home.
Reset the pessimist.
All right. Next on Rising, in the midst of everything, primaries are still happening. We're going to talk with the head of the Ohio Democratic Party, and that is next.